Jordan Love just signed a brand new contract that makes him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. Jude, what was the emotion that you experienced when you saw that news that Jordan Love is now the highest paid quarterback?
I'm going to be honest. My initial reaction was I was stupefied. Like, I just do not understand how Jordan Love can become the highest paid quarterback in the NFL after not even like a superstar season.
So you don't agree with that decision. All right. Is there a reason? So you're saying that he's not a superstar. What else would you say? Like, does he have the potential to earn that amount of money is what I'm going to say. Like, does he have the potential to be worth the $220 million over 4 years? Or do you think he's a lost cause?
All right, so I like the Packers, and I think Jordan Love has potential to fulfill his $220 million. But I just don't think what he's done so far deserves the money. And I think there's a good chance he does not live up to his last season play because, it was just unexpected. Not many teams had a ton of information on Jordan Love, and he kind of came on in the second half of the season, when people kind of counted the Packers out. So I don't think he's as legit as he looked.
Yeah, they're going off that small sample size that you saw at the end of the season. Preston, Tua signed a contract that was similar but obviously less money with the Dolphins just a couple days previous to that contract being signed. What is your thoughts on these two contracts, and do you think this is a good deal? And really, is this a better deal for the player or for the teams?
I don't love the Jordan Love contract just because it's so high. I personally wouldn't have paid him that much, but hey, I do think it was smart of them to lock him up because I do think he's a top 10 quarterback in the league for the upcoming years. I thought the Tua contract was just horrible. I did not expect them to extend him at all, especially like for that much with his injury. So I don't know. I'm not a fan of the Tua, but hey, better for me being a Kansas City fan, I guess.
Yes, for sure. As the Kansas City Chiefs prepare for a third straight Super Bowl run, trying to get the third straight would be back to back to back, and that would be something that's never happened before. Chiefs training camp is underway in St. Joe. All right, let's switch gears from the NFL and move on to the Paris Olympics. We only get to cover Summer Olympics every 4 years, and this year they are in Paris. So if you're not watching right now, I strongly encourage you to be watching the Paris Olympics, and if you're listening to it after they've ended, I'm guessing it was incredible based off these first couple days of what we have seen. First off, guys, are there any highlights that you have from anything that you've watched from the Paris Olympics? I'll start with Jude and then go to Preston.
So, a few different events, and the first event, that stuck out to me was the women's gymnastics, and that's not really a surprise, Simone Biles and the other ones that I don't remember their names. They all performed well, and one of them got fourth or something and didn't make it into the finals just because they weren't top two on the team. So I think that's a strong showing. Women's rugby was doing well when I saw them play. Women's two-person sand volleyball was doing well. So there's a lot of good teams that are doing well for the United States. And I'm excited for the track events.
Yeah, and Jude's referencing the United States, obviously, and they're having a great start to the Olympics. They're obviously dominating the medal count as of this episode being recorded. But, they're really struggling to get, I shouldn't say struggling, they only have had a couple of gold medals. So they are winning the overall medal count, but the gold medals, they are not leading in it currently. And this is not really a surprise because the amount of USA Olympians that go is extremely impressive. And if you look at the history, 2020 Tokyo, the USA brought home 138 medals. And so the next closest to them was China with 89. So the United States really dominates in the overall medal count anyway. So this isn't a huge surprise, but it has been fun to see a lot of success. Jude gave us his highlights. Preston, what have your highlights been of the Olympics so far?
I'm going to be honest. I was in Cleveland for the start of the Olympics, so I actually didn't watch anything. But honestly, I haven't watched anything at all except for the men's basketball and women's basketball because that's the only entertaining thing to me currently till the track events start. aside from Katie Ledecky doing good. But I think we have a good shot this year at setting some good records. We have overall athletes that are very good. I'm excited to see once we get down to the more interesting sports, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've been definitely been entertained by some of those other competitions, ones that even include not Americans. I watched the archery finals this morning this afternoon for the men's, and South Korea just has a dominating team. It's incredible. We talked about dominance in the Olympics and in international competition in general with Jude in the last episode. And that it was incredible to see 10 after 10 after 10, and a couple nines sprinkled in there. But I mean, in archery, that's incredibly impressive. We also talked about Noah Lyles in his performances, and hopefully an incredible performance coming up in those track and field events that both of those guys referenced. All right, I want to go back to what Preston said. He mentioned he's watched the guys and girls Olympic teams for the USA in basketball. And I think this is going to be an interesting conversation because Preston, Jude, we're all younger people. We've never experienced the dream team in our lifetimes. But my curiosity, and I want to ask Preston this, is how have things changed since the dream team in terms of international competition? I believe it's gotten better, but can you explain how it's gotten better and why?
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty obvious that the international competition's gotten better just from the standpoint of the NBA stars are now going to their home countries instead of just opting out of the Olympics. So like Jokic is playing for Serbia, and they have a Bogdanovic there, I believe, too. So there's a lot of stars going and playing in the Olympics rather than just opting out.
National competition has gotten so much better, and I think we saw that in those opening USA showcases with the United States really struggling to get dominating wins. And we'll see what they do and try to get another gold medal for this team that is compiled of absolute stars. I think this is an incredible team, but there's a little bit of drama in selecting the team. There are 3 Boston Celtics on the roster for the U.S. men's national team. There's 12 guys total that are on the team. But out of those 3, not one of them is named Jaylen Brown. Jude, what are your thoughts on Jaylen Brown being left off the Team USA roster?
Personally, I don't have a problem with it. I like the team they got. I like LeBron, Steph, all the 3 Celtics. I mean, I really respect the team they put together, and I don't think Jaylen Brown, not that he doesn't deserve it, but you can only pick so many guys, and I think they picked good guys.
Yeah, and there's something to be said for playoff wear and tear because Stephen Curry, this is his first Olympics he's playing in, because of injuries and playoff wear and tear and just a couple different things. This is his first Olympics, and you could say that, but there's 3 other Boston Celtic members. If it wasn't for Jason Tatum and Derek White, those guys to come on the roster as well, I think we would be surprised. But Preston, what's your thoughts? I mean, for me, it's difficult to understand why Drew Holiday was picked over Jaylen Brown, and the answer for Team USA and Steve Kerr was, we're just trying to put the best team together, not necessarily the 12 best players. Do you think they made the right decision in leaving Brown off the roster?
The only reason that I could see for him leaving Brown off the roster is Brown's a high scorer, and Drew Holiday's more of a pass the ball around kind of guy. So if you wanted a playmaker and a defender, going with Drew Holiday made more sense, but also Jaylen Brown's a really good defender, so it's kind of confusing to me.
And I think it confused a lot of people, including Jaylen Brown, who had a couple tweets after the decision was made, and then he wasn't selected when Derek White was added when Kawhi Leonard had to be removed due to injury. So, there's a lot of things going on, but this team is stacked. Both guys, they mentioned the talent that is on this team. It's incredible. Now, the discussion whether or not it's as good as the Dream Team, obviously that is something that we can't give a true opinion on. But, Preston, does this team have what it takes to take home the gold?
I think they do. It makes sense for them to have enough to take it home, but we'll see what happens because a lot can go wrong in the Olympics. So, I don't know. Something drastic might happen where someone sneaks in.
Well, whether you're watching men and women's basketball or you're watching any other event, at sometimes I'm watching 4 events at once. There is so much Olympic games to watch, and watching competitions that you don't know a lot about is really great just because you get to learn about somebody's lifestyle. These athletes have, their lives are competing in these activities. So it's really incredible. And like they both said, I'm extremely excited to see these track and field events that will come in the latter half of these weeks. All right, let's move on to the Kansas City Royals, who had some excitement over the All-Star break. Last year we had Salvador Perez go to Los Angeles to be the representative for the Royals, but he was it. This year we had 4 Royals show up in Texas, and all 4 participated. Cole Reagans, Seth Lugo, Bobby Witt Jr., and then once again, Salvador Perez with his 9th All-Star selection, the second highest in Royals history. Preston, just your initial thoughts on that All-Star game performance and those 4 guys going before I give some more comments on it.
Well, I thought it was overall a really special night, especially after having Bobby Witt in the home run derby the day before, which I'm sure we'll get to. But having them all come in the inning together and then Salvi catching Reagans, I think that was really special. Reagans commented on it, I know, and Lugo was probably pretty special for him making it there and having his family there to watch.
It was interesting to see how we didn't have many Royals come in at the beginning, but then they all kind of came in all at once. So the quote from the Kansas City Star said, entering with Reagans for the first time in the game were catcher Salvador Perez and shortstop Bobby Witt Jr. So Bobby Witt came in with Salvador Perez as Cole Reagans came in to pitch. So all 3 Royals made their All-Star game for that specific game debut all at once. 100% it helped, Reagans said. Run on the field. I see Bob run behind me going to shortstop. I see Sal standing there waiting on me. It makes you feel comfortable. And I think that was intentional by the Texas manager because he wanted the guys for Reagans, but then also Seth Lugo, the following guy, to have a comfortable face, a familiar face behind the plate. Reagans threw a scoreless 6th inning, and teammate Seth Lugo followed him with a scoreless 7th, helping the American League preserve a 5-3 victory in the 94th All-Star Game. So Reagans and Lugo were credited with holds, and the American League won once again. There wasn't a standout performance for the Royals in the specific All-Star Game, but Jude, what does this show, having 4 guys all play in the game, show about this year's Royals team?
I mean, what that shows is some sort of dominance, right? It may not be complete dominance like you might see like of Usain Bolt. It's not Usain Bolt dominance, but it's just quiet dominance of a team that 1 year ago, like, you don't even know if they still play baseball anymore. Like what happened to them? But now there's a quiet dominance, just waiting to come out and just slam their fist on anybody. And I just think that's a good thing, just to see where the teams come from this past year.
Yeah, I think this is a special team, and we'll get into what they can do to make themselves just a little bit better as they prepare for a potential playoff run. But yes, Preston, you mentioned it. Bobby Witt showed up, and then also performed in the home run derby the night before the All-Star game. Kind of run us through what that evening looked like, and tell us what your experience was watching his performance.
Yeah, well, obviously, watching the home run derby is a lot of fun. I watch it every year, so, always entertaining in my opinion. I would love for them to stop changing the rules and us just figure out a set of rules that works, but, I guess that's where we're at now. So next year we'll probably end up like having a set number of swings instead of pitch count, whatever, which I would be fine with because Bobby kind of got screwed over by his pitcher. But no, Bobby had me on the edge of my seat in the first round. I didn't think he was going to make it past the first round after his 20 performance and after Bone put up 21. But then he ended up sneaking into the second round, and then he looked really good from there, even though his pitcher didn't help him out very much. But Oscar Hernandez, man, I don't know how he did it. He was the biggest underdog I think I've ever seen in a home run derby, and he came up and he got the crown, which good for him. Bobby came up like 5 feet short of tying it. So that's a little unfortunate because we were all rooting for Bobby, and most of the people and fans of other teams were too. But hey, it was a fun night.
Yeah, for sure. It was great because the last time we've had a Royal in the Home Run Derby was Mike Moustakas, who obviously did not make it past the first round. And so that was really entertaining. And like you said, I didn't really expect Bobby to get past the first round, not because I didn't believe in him, but I just realized it's a difficult competition, and some people are built for it, and some really good home run hitters are not. And so when he made it past the first round and then really got that rhythm in the second round, I started to get really excited. And I got even more excited when I saw that Teoscar Hernandez was going to play him in the finals. But obviously, Hernandez got in a really good groove, and Bobby was not able to catch up. But, the best part about all of it was at the end, Bobby was still smiling. He was super happy, and it was just fun to have some Royals representation against a large market team like the Dodgers. And it was just really fun, and it really started to get I guess it would get the national landscape really starting to follow Bobby and realize this guy's legit. He can play in the field. He can steal bases. He's super fast, and he can hit home runs. And he's an incredible, overall really good player. He is leading a team right now that headed into the All-Star break 52-45. So 7 games over 500. The Royals look good, but do they look good enough right now to be in a playoff spot, Preston Graber?
Right now, I would say no. I think there is too much going on within our system that helps us just miss that spot. Like, injuries are happening, players that are catalysts are going down. Renfroe was out just before the break, and he came back hot, and so we need him to stay. But, like, having Massey not there every day kind of hurts us more than I think most people were expecting. So, once he gets fully healthy and is able to play every day,
the Royals are looking for their first,
and our bullpen just needs a lot of improvements, and everyone's getting hurt.
So looking for their first playoff berth since the 2015 World Series run. So, what do the Royals need to do specifically at the trade deadline to make themselves better? I would say the easy answer is to get pitching and to get bats, specifically corner outfield bats. And you saw the Royals go out and get 2 pitchers, including Lorenzen, which I'm very excited about. Preston, I want you to break that down in just a second. But Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic reported that the Royals are targeting those right-handed bats. Specifically, the Royals are looking at Nationals outfielder Lane Thomas along with 2 Angels teammates, Luis Rengifo and Taylor Ward. Both guys that I know and I think would be good acquisitions. And Preston, what are your thoughts on these prospective additions, and what are your thoughts on the official additions to this Royals roster?
Well, so Lane Thomas just got traded for this afternoon by Cleveland. So he's off the board, unfortunately. So at this point, I'm hearing it's Luis Rengifo and Taylor Ward, which is rather unfortunate. I wanted Lane Thomas pretty badly, so I hope we can end up with Taylor Ward because he's a hard hit guy. He barrels the ball. He's in the 10 percentile or whatever it's called. He's in the upper 10% of hard hit balls. And the moves that we did make, I hope Hunter Harvey was a good move, but trading our second prospect in our system for him seemed a little bit overpay in my opinion, just because of his high ERA. But I love the Michael Lorenzen move because I've been asking forever and hoping that Alec Marsh would move to the bullpen. And so hopefully that means Marsh will move to the bullpen and we can see his fastball get up to 97, 98.
So you just broke down the Royals acquisitions and possible targets. Can you name any other teams and possible additions that you think that they might make, things that you're hearing outside of the Royals?
Yeah, well, obviously Orioles have been in talks for Tariq Skubal, but it's going to take a load of prospects, and the Orioles are really the only team that have that now. So Skewball, the only team he would go to, I would guess, would be the Orioles, and they would only trade for him because they don't think they're going to be able to keep Corbin Burns next year. So they might try and figure something out with Burns before going and trading for him. I'm not sure on that front, but I know the Tigers aren't bad this year. They're pretty average for what they were expected to be. So they may keep him and hope next year goes good. And then Garrett Crochet is the other big arm that people are talking about being moved. But now that the Dodgers went and already traded for some pitching, I don't anticipate Crochet being moved unless it's for a team with prospects.
So going back to the Skubal thing, that's important because if the Orioles were to get him, they could lock him up for multiple years. And you mentioned that they may not be able to keep Burns. That's one thing that I've noticed about the Royals' choices is they're choosing guys that will be here for not only this season, but also next year. They're not lone players that we're signing. We're signing guys for the future, and not necessarily the long-term future, but definitely the short-term future. And so based off that, my mentality is, my guess right now is that JJ Picollo is thinking it would be great if we can follow the Diamondbacks route, so their blueprint from last year where they went from nothing to making the World Series. Obviously, they lost it, but they just had a solid player. They had a solid young player that went off, and then they had a group of guys around him, and they were able to go. But what Piccolo is probably saying is, hey, that would be great if that happens this year, but we're really targeting next year being a true contender. And I think he's starting to put some pieces in and add some pieces that he thinks for next year specifically could be really good, but they could be impact players this year. I think it's important to remember if the Royals don't have the level of success that they had in 14 and 15. Just remember there was some process, there was a plan in place before that. Moving on to NFL fantasy football outlook. All right, Jude, simple question. As people prepare for their fantasy drafts, who should they target?
Okay. So, as a fantasy football professional and a top 3 finisher most years, I've got to tell you there's a duo that you want to get almost immediately. And it's a Ravens duo. It's Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews. So the reason I say that is because every year I've drafted them, I've had success. And success looks different for different people, but I would say I've been successful. And the reason for this is Lamar Jackson is just the best fantasy quarterback due to his running ability and his aura on the field. And Mark Andrews is always underrated, so you can get him. You can always get him for a good round for where he should be. He's always drafted a little bit late. And for wide receivers, I always look for the steals at the end of the draft. Like last year, Michael Pittman was a steal for me. And just players like that people don't like, but you still got to go for. This year, Tank Dell, I wouldn't draft him early. He's too much of a severe pick. But if you can get him late, coming back from injury can be tough. But I think, based on what happened last year, I think he's got a lot of big play potential. The only issue is obviously Stephon Diggs at Houston. But just always look for those wide receivers that might get a lot of targets. Yeah, Packers wide receivers are going to be interesting this year, so that's my number one tip.
Okay, yeah, that's perfect. And Jude mentioned it there. Lamar is good scoring-wise because of his running ability. For the casual fantasy football fan, you get more points if you have rushing touchdowns compared to passing touchdowns. And so guys like Lamar Jackson are a little bit more valuable. But the question is, when you run the ball more, will you stay healthy? And we'll see if that happens this year. I believe Jude thinks that he will stay healthy. And also, another guy who's had some struggles with health is Mark Andrews. And he's one of the best options, I would say, at the tight end position. Now, the tight end position is really strange because you have a solid crop of 5-ish guys, maybe 4, that are at the top in the number 1 tier. But then it's a severe drop-off, and so when you're drafting, you kind of have to keep that in mind. So, Preston, every year we look at the tight end position and see who is taking a step up, who's taking a step down. What does that tier 1 look like? And what are some guys that you think have either fallen out of that number 1 tier, or do you think have moved up into that tier?
Yeah, I mean, so tight ends the past years, Kelsey has been a first round pick, but this year he's still going to be a tier one tight end, but he will not be going in the first round. So do not reach on Kelsey in the first or second round. Wait to take a tight end until round 4 or 5 because you'll be able to get a guy that is good. So my tier one list this year would be Laporta, Dalton, George Kittle, Travis Kelsey, Mark Andrews, and Trey McBride. So 6 guys fit into my tier one. And then tier two has some really close followers with David Njoku, Jake Ferguson, Dalton Schultz. They're all really close there. I don't know. I don't think I missed any big names, but those would be my top like 9 to 10.
So he just showed you the tier list and the differences. Now, I will say, with Kelsey getting older, not necessarily getting worse, because we haven't seen that fall off yet, but there's an expectation from fantasy football fans that that could happen in a year. So the gap between Kelsey and guys like David Njoku is slowly becoming smaller. Now, the next thing I want to ask is, Jude, let's talk about rookies. Now, rookies in fantasy football rarely have a massive impact. Quarterbacks rarely have a massive impact, specifically is what I should say. Sometimes wide receivers have a huge impact. Sometimes quarterbacks have a huge impact. Sometimes we have running backs that can also make a huge impact that come out of nowhere because of the running back position and how it's valued. Jude, what rookies are you looking for to break out this year at each one of those positions?
Okay, so first of all, tight end, it's a guy that I think should be in the tier one this year. Ben Sinnott of Kansas State University. I think he's got a lot of potential in the big leagues, and I'm excited to see what he can do. Wide receiver. I'm looking at Xavier Legette for the Carolina Panthers. I think the Panthers have wide receiver is going to be an important position for them this year, and I think with Deontay Johnson potentially taking a lot of the good cover guys and against the enemy team, I think Xavier Legette can get some good one-on-one matchups going deep for touchdown balls. So I don't know if that'll actually happen, but that's just something random I thought of. To be honest, that's the only rookies that I would really look at because I'm not a professional. I don't know any other rookies.
Dude, out of those quarterback rookies, Caleb Williams, Jalen Daniels, and Jaden Daniels, and Drake May, all of those guys. Is there any of those rookie quarterbacks that you think that could have a big impact this year?
See, you reminded me of some important names, and I think Caleb Williams is going to have a bad year. I mean, that's just an opinion, so don't cancel me for that one, but I don't think any rookie quarterback is going to be too good this year. But I mean, I wouldn't like to be proven wrong because I don't really care that much about the rookies, but hey, we'll see what happens. I don't think they're going to be good.
So, Preston, what are your rookie picks to break out this year in fantasy football specifically?
Well, I think Jude had a good idea with Xavier Legette. I think he'll do decent. Personally, I don't know. And Ben Sinnott, yeah, Ema, baby. Lad McConkey with the Chargers, I think he has to perform. I don't see a way in which he isn't a top 40 receiver in the league. So Lad McConkey's maybe a sleeper pick, but I'm guessing he'll still go in the top 8 rounds of fantasy football drafts. So if you really want him and if you believe in Herbert, you'll need to go get him early. A running back sleeper might be Trey Benson. He went to Arizona, and he's out of Oregon, I believe, and he is a sleeper as well. Connor struggles with injuries a lot in Arizona, so he might be in for something. I'm not a Daniel Jones fan. I'm just going to say that right now, but the Giants have no other weapons, so Malik Neighbors is also someone who may slide in some drafts just because everybody hates the Giants because they kind of suck. But those would be the 3 rookies I would keep my eye out on that aren't obvious because Marvin Harrison's obviously going to go high in draft.
Yeah, and I think he'll have an impact for sure as a rookie, at that position in the receiver in fantasy football. You have a prime opportunity to make an impact. So my guess is that Harrison will be the highest pick for most rookies in drafts. The final fantasy football outlook we want to look at is running backs. Jude, specifically Saquon Barkley, is in a new home now. He's with his rival team from his previous team, the Giants, but he's now with the Eagles. What do you think his fantasy impact is with the Philadelphia Eagles?
So I've never been a big Saquon fan. I think, after his breakout in New York, I think he kind of just injuries derailed him. He was kind of just inconsistent most weeks. So, personally, despite the Eagles being way better than the Giants, I don't think you can have confidence in Saquon. I don't know how much his body has left after a rough career, not a rough career, but not living up to what he initially did in his breakout year in New York. So I just think it's hard for me personally to feel desired to draft Saquon too early, and I just have never liked him personally, so I would never draft him, but that's just me.
He does have a high injury history, a lot of injuries that have really made him not valuable at all in fantasy football. Preston, there was a lot of running backs movement this year, this offseason. There was a running back carousel, if you will. What running backs do you believe will break out this year in fantasy football, or at least will just have an impact in which that they didn't have before with their previous team?
I'm going to be completely honest. The only person that I would trust out of any of the running backs that were moved to be consistent would be Derrick Henry. I don't think Tony Pollard will do well. I don't think DeAndre Swift will be amazing like he was last year. And, actually, Joe Mixon, I do think Joe Mixon will be good in Houston. But I'm worried about Stroud wanting just to sling the ball around, so he may not get as many touches because he's not the big receiving back. So Mixon and Henry would be my safe bets for those that were traded, or I guess signed in free agency. But I wouldn't trust Pollard, Swift, or
my last question for you, Preston. Before Jude gives us his quote of the day, Preston, this is a Chiefs-specific question. It's Patrick Mahomes. And Mahomes has consistently been a really, really good fantasy option. Oftentimes will go number one in more amateur leagues. Obviously, more professional leagues, he goes later, second or third round. But my question for you is, he threw 50 touchdowns back in his second season, his second official. And my question for you is, now that he has a faster wide receiver room, you obviously add guys like Xavier Worthy and Marquise Brown. Does this fantasy impact change at all? And do you think he can return to some of that offensive success that he had, specifically in fantasy football, from the earlier days of his career?
I do think he can return back to what he was as far as 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns. Will it be difficult? Yes, because I think it will take them 4 or 5 games to figure out where Worthy fits into all of this and if we need a different number 3 receiver, because Rashi's not going to get suspended till December or January because that's what court case is. So we'll still have him and Hollywood at the top, but I think our 3 receiver is a question mark. So personally, I think Mahomes will be the best fantasy quarterback, but the rushing does scare me a little bit. If he runs as much as he has in past years, then he'll be fine. He could easily go for 500 yards. But I don't think he'll be running as much now that we have that many weapons. So just the points in and out is something that
There you go. We recapped what's going on right now with the Paris Olympics. We talked about the Royals and their performance at All-Star Week. And we also gave you our NFL fantasy football outlook, at least a preview of it. I guarantee there will be some more talk of that as the season grows closer. It's not too far away, and we're extremely excited for the NFL season as well as the college football season, and we'll dive into that in future episodes. Thank you so much for listening to episode 37 of the Power and Light podcast. We really appreciate you guys who listen, and Jude, send us out with your quote of the day.
All right, so today I have a quote by Hunter S. Thompson, and it is, "There's no such thing as paranoia. Your worst fears can come true at any moment."